guys, and welcome to my channel. As way of kind of an explanation what this channel is going to be about, I thought that I would just kind of start this as a way to share some of my experiences in going throughout life, and kind of have a place for me to be able to talk about certain things, and to be able to just share certain experiences in a format that is not Instagram or Facebook, because it's more difficult to articulate thoughts and feelings over writing, because obviously you don't have facial expressions, you don't have tone of voice, you can't always tell exactly what people mean when they write. And so I just wanted this to be kind of a place where I could share some of the experiences that I'm going through in my life right now. And my main motivation for wanting to start this is the people who have helped me the most throughout this incredibly difficult time in my life is people who have gone through a similar experience, that have been able to share those experiences, whether it was on YouTube or they know me personally and they've reached out and said, hey, I know what you're going through, I've been through the same thing. And so hopefully I can be that person for someone else out there, no matter if it's one person or 50 people or however many it is. This isn't me like looking for attention or anything like that. It's purely to have a space to be able to talk about some things that may be able to help someone else down the line. And before I get started, I just want to apologize. I am sick today, so if my voice sounds weird or if I'm like sniffing or coughing throughout this video, I'll try to cut as much of that out as I can, but I am sick. That's why I'm here cuddled up with my little blankets and stuff. But I was feeling very motivated to make this video, and I didn't want to wait until I thought about it too much and kind of talked myself out of it. So here I am. I've been thinking about starting this channel and starting making these videos a lot over the past few months. It hasn't been, a drop of the hat decision. It's been something I've been thinking about a lot, and I feel like I'm finally ready to be able to share some things. And I wanted to do that while I was feeling ready before I talked myself out of it. So here I am. But so anyways, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bailey. I am 21 years old, and I am pregnant and single. And I just wanted to kind of go through my story of everything that happened. There are a lot of details that I won't go into with my relationship, specifically with my ex, just because, out of respect for him, there are two sides to every story, and he's not here to tell his side, and so I don't want to, cast him in a bad light or bash on him or anything. I just want to be, honest about the situation without going into too much detail. But anyways, basically what this channel will be, just so you guys know, is will probably be a combination of like sit-down videos like this and more day-in-the-life vlog type videos, just kind of showing my life as I prepare to be a single mom, and my life as a single mom when my son is born, and all of that. But so anyways, to start this, I do have a little notebook of my timeline of everything that happened so that I don't forget anything that I wanted to talk about. So if I'm glancing over here, I'm looking at my notebook. But so anyways, to start off this story, I met my ex the summer of 2017. We worked up at the same family camp here in Utah, just up in the mountains. It's a very, very beautiful place. I loved it a lot. We met up there. We were both working up there. When I first met him, I was like, oh, this guy's kind of cute. He seemed a little bit like a player, so I wasn't really super interested at first. And you know, towards the end of the summer, we started to talk a little bit more. We started to hang out a little bit more. We hadn't really been in like the same friend groups among the employees that worked up there. You know, there were a lot of people up there, and my friends, like I had this group of friends and he kind of had this group of friends, and then I don't even remember how we started like talking to each other more, but we started talking. We, you know, did a couple of activities together. He ended up being my first kiss at the end of that summer, and after he kissed me, he stopped talking to me. And so I was very confused about that. And, you know, just kind of was like, okay, whatever, it was a summer fling, move on, get rid of all that. So I started college. I started the next semester of college, which was my third semester at BYU. I started that in the fall, and just kind of went throughout my semester in school. A couple months in, he started Snapchatting me. He was like, hey, you know, what's going on? Just catching up kind of a thing. And so we, you know, Snapchatted back and forth, started talking again. We made plans to meet and hang out, and which was, you know, kind of difficult distance-wise because he went to Utah State, which is about 2 hours north of BYU, which is kind of a long way. And so, you know, we talked about maybe meeting up, and then we decided, okay, we want to like hang out and get to know each other better. And so we like set a date to do that. I was gonna drive up to Logan to go see him, and you know, the couple of days leading up to when I was supposed to go up to Logan, he kind of stopped talking to me as frequently. Like, we would still kind of message and stuff, but it was just not as often as normal. And so, you know, the day came that I was supposed to go up to Logan, and I was like, I texted him and I was like, okay, is this still a thing? Is this still a plan? Like, I'm getting ready to go. I want to make sure that you're gonna be there if I'm gonna drive 2 hours one direction to come up and see you. And he never texted me back. So I just kind of hung out in my apartment, and I was like, okay, cool. Hung out with my roommates, did a couple of things with them, and while I waited for this guy to text me back, and he never did. I was like, okay. And the next day, he finally texted me back, and he was like, oh, sorry, I was doing stuff with my family all day, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. Which was strange, because, like, I mean, he's allowed to do things with his family, obviously. But his family lived a lot closer to Provo than Logan, and so I was kind of like, well, if you're going to be down there, why was I going to be driving up to Logan? And maybe it was a last minute change of plans kind of thing. I don't know. He didn't explain it. But anyways, after that, he kind of ghosted me. And I was like, okay, cool. Right on. Doing this again. And so that was in the fall. And then that January, the next January of 2018, I left to serve an 18-month service mission in Billings, Montana for my church. And so I left in January, and I ended up coming home early in July, so I was only out for 6 months. But it was a great experience. Loved every second of it. Not every second, but I did love it. And when I got back, I started talking to this other guy that I had dated in high school. You know, we were really, really good friends in high school. We dated, we were boyfriend, girlfriend. We ended up calling things off when he left on his mission for the church. Because he was going on his mission. I was moving to Utah and starting school at BYU. And so we were like, you know what, let's just, you're going to be gone for 2 years. He was the only person I'd ever dated. And I said, I want to, date other people, kind of figure out if this is something that could work between us. And, we both kind of mutually said, we'll stay friends and just kind of see what happens. So we wrote letters to each other throughout his mission, throughout my mission. When I got back, we started talking again. He had also come home early and was going to be going back out in a few months. And so we, talked through those few months and decided, what, we've kind of because, not only was it long distance, which sucks anyways, but he was on a mission, so he wasn't allowed to talk to anybody outside of his preparation day, P-Day, which is Monday, it was Monday for him. And so that was hard, but we made it work for a little while. And so that was in December when he went back out on his mission. So then in January now we're into 2018, I moved to Arizona to live with my grandparents for 6 months or so, was my plan, just because I was taking a break from school, didn't really know what I wanted to do, didn't really know what I wanted to study, just kind of needed a break from the Utah scene, wanted to just get out and explore more kind of on my own, get out of my parents' house. I love my parents, but needed kind of a break from that. And so I moved in with my grandparents in Arizona. And in probably March, I kept talking to that missionary the whole time. And in March, I kind of decided, what, this is really difficult for me to be so emotionally invested in a relationship and to not feel emotionally supported in that same kind of way, just because he physically wasn't able to give that to me because he was on a mission and we could only talk once a week. And so I was like, this is really difficult for me. I love you. I think we need to kind of call things off, at least for now, until you get back. And then we can kind of pick up where we left off and figure things out if we're still kind of in similar places in our lives and we think that it could work. So that was really, really difficult for me. I cried for days after that. And, we still talked every once in a while. We kept in communication. We kept our friendship up. But that was the most devastating breakup I've ever been through. And I was the one that did it. And it wasn't even like a definite breakup. But so anyways, after that happened, that was in like March. In April, my ex, who is the father of my child, I'll just continue to refer to him as my ex, he ended up messaging me about one of my Instagram posts. He was like, hey, you look great. It's been a while, how are things going, kind of a thing. And I was kind of like, okay, here's this guy again, how long is it gonna last this time? And so, we just kind of started talking, and I was like, I'm not gonna get my hopes up, I'm not gonna do anything, I don't even know if I like this guy anymore. And so I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna, we can talk and that's fine. And so I ended up moving back to Utah towards the end of April, and we ended up going on our first official date, April 26th. because it was the day Avengers Endgame came out. We went to go see Endgame with my brothers, and it was amazing. The movie was amazing. But anyways, so we went on our first date on April 26th, and then he asked me out again the next night, and we went on like 3 or 4 dates in the span of a week. And you know, at this point I started to warm up towards him a little bit more, because he was the one that was driving an hour and a half down south to where my parents lived to take me on these dates, and then he was driving an hour and a half back, and I was like, okay, this, like, he's showing a little bit more dedication than he did last time, so that's good. And so, you know, we went on a few dates, and I kind of started to like him a little bit, and I honestly think that, you know, because looking back, I'm like, you know, I had a history with this guy. I didn't really like him that much. It was more of like a crush kind of a thing, and I was like, why did I start dating him? And I think it was a combination of him being a rebound after a really difficult breakup, which I have no shame in admitting. He was definitely a rebound. And you know, at the same time, I had a massive crush on him like a year and a half ago, and so I was like, I kind of felt like, oh well, I should still like this guy because I had like this huge crush on him that entire summer. So we, you know, went on a few dates, and then on May 4th he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I said yes. And then after that, honestly, everything from our very first date moved very, very quickly. You know, we had our first date on April 26th. On May 4th, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and on May 5th, he told me that he loved me. And it was so fast, and I think that's one of the reasons that everything happened the way that it did, because I just got so caught up in the speed of how everything was happening. It had been a while since I had been in that kind of a relationship where it wasn't long distance, where I was actually seeing him, you know, a few times a week in person. And we also connected a lot over the fact that we both were having kind of like a faith crisis, I would want to say, because just as way of a little bit more backstory, this is probably going to be a very long video and I'm rambling, I know. But when I was on my mission, rewinding all the way back to that, I experienced a lot of anxiety and depression that I hadn't really experienced up until that point, and so I wasn't equipped to deal with it properly. And that was a really, really difficult experience for me. And coming home from that was the reason that I came home early. And coming home from that, it was really difficult for me to look back on my mission and to think, you know, this was the time of my life where I had never prayed more often. I had never prayed harder. I had never read the scriptures more. I was doing absolutely everything that I was supposed to be doing, and that was when everything started to go wrong emotionally and mentally. And so I had a really hard time understanding why that was, and that led me to kind of question my faith and kind of go through a faith crisis where I was like, well, you know, if that happened, then what does that mean for whether or not, you know, this is true, or do I still believe this anymore? And so he was also having a faith crisis for different reasons, and I won't go into those because that's his thing. But we were both kind of in that mutual area of, look, all of our friends are Christian, all of our friends belong to the same church, we can't really talk to them about this kind of stuff, and so we were talking to each other, and we connected over that. And I think that's a huge reason why, you know, everything did kind of happened so fast was because there was that connection where I was like, oh, okay, somebody understands this thing that I'm going through. So anyways, moving back forward, everything's happening very quickly. He told me he loved me on May 5th. Very soon after that, we started talking about potentially moving in together, maybe getting engaged somewhere down the line, you know, eventually possibly getting married if things worked out, you know, however this goes. At this point though, his future was very uncertain. He had quit his job shortly after we started dating. Actually, it might have been before we started dating, but while we were still talking. But anyways, he quit his job very, very early into our relationship and kind of sat around that summer and didn't know what he wanted to do, wasn't really looking for anything. And so, you know, he had a couple of options where he's like, well, maybe I could do this, and if I did that, then we could move down there together and like live together for a while and then get engaged and, you know, whatever. And I'm not sure when that kind of moved into us, you know, it moved from us talking about moving in together to us talking about, oh, let's just get engaged and get married and then move in together. And so that was quick, and we ended up getting engaged on July 6th, which, you know, going from, we started dating on May 4th and we were engaged by July 6th. That was very fast, really fast. And, you know, every other guy that I had dated before him, I had dated kind of within the boundaries of a Christian relationships where, you know, intimacy outside of marriage is not a thing. And, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so being in the middle of this faith crisis and trying to figure out how quote unquote normal people go throughout relationships, I was like, well, you know, this is what people do, and it was something that he really, really wanted and needed in our relationship. It was something that he very much pushed for, which I was not comfortable with, but, you know, I was in the middle of that circumstance being like, well, this is what people do. I should want to do this, right? And he wants to do this, and I love him and I'm in a relationship with him, and so I should want him to be happy. And so, you know, that train of thought just kind of led into decisions that were made that weren't necessarily the best decisions to make, and especially not the best decisions to make at that time of my life. It was not something that I was ready for. It was not something that I was comfortable with, and I did feel very taken advantage of, and like I was very naive at that time, and I kind of wish that I could go back and kind of punch myself in the face and be like, yo, stand up for yourself. Like, you don't have to do that. It's not, you know, it's not gonna make you happy, it's gonna make you less happy. And so, all of that. But anyways, so we ended up getting engaged on July 6th, and we started wedding planning. We had set our wedding date for October 4th, which was, you know, quite soon after. It was like 3 months after we got engaged, and so I was like, okay. And I ended up finding out that I was pregnant on July 31st, which was insane. Because in the weeks from July 6th, when we got engaged, to July 31st, I started to think, you know what? I don't know if this is the relationship that I need to be in right now. I don't know if he's the guy that I want to spend the rest of my life with. I just started feeling very uncertain about all of it. And I think the catalyst for that was when he proposed. Because I felt I had such a conflict of feelings. I was happy, I was excited, but I wasn't as excited as I felt like I should have been. And so, even while he was proposing to me, I was like, I should be happier. I should be more excited, right? Like, I'm excited, but it's more of like I'm getting engaged kind of a thing, rather than, I'm getting engaged to him kind of a thing, And so I did have that conflict of emotions where I was like, okay, I feel like I should be feeling differently about this. And it made me really reflect on our relationship, and I realized that I wasn't happy. I was miserable. I felt very manipulated and used in almost every aspect of our relationship, and it just wasn't a good place for me to be at that time. And so I kind of started to draw back from him a little bit, and I didn't say anything to him. I just was more distant. I was less emotionally available. And he noticed. And at one point in our relationship, and at one point after we got engaged, it was maybe a week or two later, it was before I found out I was pregnant, we sang a musical number with my family in church. Both of us were very musical. He sang with me all the time. It was so much fun. But so we sang a musical number with my family in church, and being with my family in church again, it had been months since I had gone to church with my family. I was like, you know what? This feels good. This feels like I'm, coming back to the values that I'd grown up with and that I had lost sight of. And I was like, you know what? I want to make some changes in my life, and I want to feel this feeling again. I want to, this is the kind of family that I want to have. I want to raise my family in this church, and I want to raise my family to love God. And I started having that realization, and I was like, oh, okay, well, there are changes that need to happen, and I need to be able to communicate that and say what I want to change, and just say, you know what, here is where I am right now. And I know it's not where I was when we started dating, but obviously people change and people's religious perspectives change, and I was like, you know what, I'm ready to have this in my life again. And so I sat down with him later that day or the next day, I don't remember, and I kind of just said, you know what, this is how I'm feeling about this. I think that I want to start going to church again. I want to start doing these things again. And I was like, I don't care what you do. I'm not gonna try to force you to come to church with me. I just want you to know that this is where I am. This is something that I want to do. And I was like, you know what? And we're getting married in a couple of months anyways. I was like, let's just, intimacy before marriage, let's make it not a thing again. Because that was a huge thing that I really, really struggled with. Just constantly being at war with myself, of being like, well, it was never ever something that I wanted in our relationship. And so I was constantly in this point of feeling like, oh, I need to do this to make him happy, but it's making me very unhappy. And it's causing this war of I know I wasn't raised with these values. I know it's something that I was raised that I was taught is wrong, and so I felt like, you know, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I for sure wasn't doing it for the reasons that I should have been doing it for if it was the right thing in that relationship at that time, which I don't believe it was. And he got very defensive about it, and he said, I don't want to stop doing these things physically. You know, I think that's crazy. I don't want to stop that for sure. And he also said, I don't know how I feel about you and our future kids going to church. I don't really like that. And his reasoning for that was he didn't want to be that dad. That was it. He had no reason for us to be like, well, I strongly believe that this isn't true, and so like I'm not really comfortable with these kinds of teachings and stuff like that, and I don't really want to raise our kids with that. His entire reasoning was, I don't want to go to church, and I don't want to be that dad that doesn't go to church with his kids. And so that set me back even more and got me thinking, you know what, this really, first of all, this is not a healthy relationship. And I was like, second of all, like, that comment just made me think about so many things, because it was such a selfish reasoning for, you know, not wanting me to do something. And so I just started thinking about all sorts of things. And then on July 31st, when I'm in the middle of all this, like, okay, I think I'm gonna break up with him, you know, I don't think this is the right relationship for me, I found out I was pregnant. I was like, oh crap. But so how I found out that I was pregnant is I woke up that morning and I just felt off, and I kind of just had this sinking feeling in my stomach, and I was just kind of like, dang, okay, I think I need to just go to Walmart and just take a test and just see. And the month before that, I had actually also thought that I had gotten pregnant, which was crazy. I was like positive that I was, and then I wasn't. But so I just kind of had that sinking feeling, and I was like, you know, I don't think that I am. Last month I thought I was, and I wasn't, but I just need this peace of mind, and I need to go check. So I drove down to Walmart, and I bought a couple of pregnancy tests, and I took them in the bathroom, and it was very positive right away. And my hands were shaking, and I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what the heck am I gonna do? I was like, oh no. And so I texted one of my best friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing just happened, 911, like, answer me right away, please. Like, and he was at work, so he couldn't answer my phone. He couldn't answer his phone, which was fine because I was freaking out, and by the time he was actually able to respond to me, I was much more calm, and we were able to like actually have a good conversation and a good discussion about things, and that was very good. But so then anyways, I ended up calling my ex and being like, hey, so I went to Walmart and I took a test and we're having a baby. We're not getting married for a couple months, so like, this is crazy. How can you be so excited? But so anyways, he was really excited, and I ended up talking to my mom like a week or two later, and just kind of being like, you know what, these are all the thoughts that I'm having, this is all the stuff that's going on. And I was talking to her about my relationship with my ex, and I was like, you know what, I feel like this isn't the right relationship because of these things. And I told her, you know, I laid out a few things. I hadn't told her about that I was pregnant yet. And I was like, Mom, when I broke up with the missionary guy, I was like, I was so devastated and thinking about breaking up with him. You know, the couple of days leading up before I did, or weeks, before I did, I was like, I cried all the time. I was so sad. And I was like, I don't feel the same way about this. I don't feel the same way about him. I don't, like, thinking about breaking up with him is just like, oh, okay, like, it'll be hard, but whatever. And I was like, that can't be right. And I was like, just looking back on a previous relationship where I really had truly loved someone, it made me realize I don't actually love this person. You know, I'm just kind of here for the ride. I'm not giving anything to this relationship. I'm just kind of plugging along with whatever happens and just kind of going with the flow. And so she was like, you know what, you need to break up with him. You can't, like, you can't be there, and you can't do that in a relationship, and it's not healthy. And she was like, you know what, I've tried to be supportive and I've tried to like him and I think he's a good guy, but I haven't felt right about it. And I was like, okay, hearing my mom say that, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm not crazy. Like, this is good. This is, you know. And then I was like, okay, but this is even more complicated because I'm pregnant. And, you know, she kind of was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm pregnant. She was like, okay. She took a second to let it sink in. She didn't get mad. I thought she would. I was terrified. She did not react in the way that I expected at all. And she was like, you know what? You can't marry someone just because you're pregnant. Like, if you weren't pregnant, would you break up with him? And I was like, oh yeah, 100% right now. And she was like, you can't get married just because you're pregnant, because it's not going to be a good marriage. It's not going to be healthy. And, you know, eventually all of this is going to come to a head, and maybe it's 20 years down the road when you have, you know, 5 more kids and it's way more emotionally difficult on them. And it's, you know, it's going to be so much harder, and it would be so much worse on your kids. And my mom, her parents went through a divorce when she was in high school, I think. And so she knows what divorce is like on kids. And she was like, it's not a good situation to be in. And she said, you know what? My sister married her first husband because she got pregnant. And they got divorced, and it was terrible. And it was really, really hard for everyone involved. And she was like, you can't just marry him because you're pregnant. And I was like, okay. So, you know, we started, and so, you know, I talked to my ex about a couple of things, and I was like, you know what, I just feel like I need a break from this relationship. I don't want to officially call anything off yet. I just, you know, I need to not talk to you or see you for a week or so, just so I can have some distance to think about some things. And he freaked out, and he would not stop texting me. He would not leave me alone that entire week that I asked for him to give me a break. And it was just opened my eyes to kind of how possessive and controlling he was in that relationship. And, you know, I'm not trying to rip on him or bash on him or anything. It was just, you know, this is the experience that I had. These are the feelings that I had. And, you know, that was really difficult for me. And so finally, on August 25th, I officially called it off and said, you know what, we're not getting married, we're not dating, we're not doing anything. Like, just, we're done. And that was great. And so since then, it's been this emotional roller coaster of trying to figure out how to do things when, you know, we are parents. We're going to be parents, and we're going to be doing it separately, and, you know, trying to figure out where boundaries need to be drawn and stuff like that. And it was really, really emotionally difficult on me until I finally got the courage to say, you know what, I'm laying down boundaries. This is what's going to happen. This is what's not going to happen. And that's it. There's absolutely no more discussion about this. Don't want to talk about any of these things anymore. This is how it's going to be. And that was really difficult because I got a lot of backlash from him. He was very upset about that. But since then, and looking back on all of that, I have realized that, you know, it was the right decision to make at that time. Those boundaries needed to be drawn. And I have been so much less stressed and so much more emotionally and mentally healthy because of the break that I've gotten from drawing those boundaries and setting those boundaries. They needed to be set, you know, that's just the honest truth. So anyways, where I am now, I am 27 weeks pregnant with a healthy baby boy. I'm so excited, and in a future video I'll probably talk a little bit about the gender reveal and all of my emotions with that because they were very complex, but I have gotten over that and I am now very, very happy to be having a little baby boy. He is due on April 3rd, so excited. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, just trying to figure out how I'm gonna do things as a single mom. I'm excited to go on this journey. I'm excited to take you guys with me on this journey. And I have to be really honest with you, this video was really hard for me to make. It was really difficult for me to go back and make my little timeline and think about everything that happened, to think about talking about everything that happened, because, you know, this is the internet and people will judge and people will have not nice and unwanted opinions. But I do feel like I'm at a time in my life where I have so much to share, and I feel like this is the space that I need to share some of these things. And so yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at right now. I'll probably split this video into 2 parts because I think I've been talking for like 45 minutes now. But anyways, make sure you guys, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe down below so you don't miss any future videos. Click the bell notification so you can be notified when I do upload. I'm not sure how consistently I'll be doing that. I'm gonna try to figure out, you know, this is my first video, so I'm gonna try to figure out how everything goes, what kind of a schedule I want to be on. Eventually I do want to be on a very, you know, I upload on these days kind of schedule. We'll just kind of see how that goes. But anyways, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!